Welcome to the latest Ticker TV interview. I'm Donald Leggatt, and I'm joined today by Ken Sharpe, a millionaire property developer focused on Zimbabwe. Ken's property vehicle WestProp is listed on the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange in Zimbabwe and currently has a market cap of around $1 billion. Established almost 20 years ago, WestProp delivers a range of property services including property development, sales, leasing and property management, and has a portfolio of prime land and residential, commercial and industrial developments in Harare, Bulawayo and Victoria Falls, everywhere around Zimbabwe in fact. Ken Sharpe, the entrepreneur behind the business, joins me now. Welcome, Ken.
Thanks, Donald.
So, are you having a useful trip to London, Ken?
I am. We arrived in yesterday and met some investors, went to the London Stock Exchange, had a great dinner, met new people, build relationships. So I think that's what it's all about, is relational capital, as my chairman would say, sometimes is more important than financial capital.
Fantastic. Now, our investor audience may not be so familiar with the property development opportunities in Zimbabwe. So why don't you give us a quick overview, a quick summary of the WestProp Holdings business, please, Ken?
Sure. Well, let me just start with the macro environment. So if you look at hyperinflation, which happened in 2008, 2009, the economy was wiped out completely through hyperinflation, and we dollarized 2009 February. We basically accepted United States dollars as the main currency. And today, we still have a multi-currency regime till 2030 at least. And if you look at property growth from 2008, I would say on average, property's grown 300%, 3 times. So we took advantage of that as WestProp. I saw an opportunity in the sort of around 2007, 2006. We started buying up quite a lot of land, partnered with the city of Harare, our municipality, in a particular development called Sunshine Developments, where we're building this first PGA golf course. And we took into the company considerable amounts, tracts of land, which we would ideally we would want to develop into stands. But then as we got into the development cycle of changing the use of this land, in some places the use wasn't right, so we had to do change of use, get different rights. We started master planning these pieces of land and discovered it would make more sense for us to build new cities. So we've actually got a design now of 3 new cities that we're building in Harare, in the capital, just under 1,000 acres of land, about 60,000 residential units, a couple of shopping malls, 5 hotels. So our focus is really the capital city of Harare. And at WestProp, we're driven by our billion brick vision, which we want to achieve by 2050.
And who do you see as where do you raise your capital from? Who are your investors? And who actually buys these different commercial and residential properties? Who do you see as your clients? Give us the overall picture.
So currently, we did an IPO at the Vic Falls Stock Exchange 2 years back. And the idea there was not really to raise capital, but was to enter the capital markets in a US dollar platform, the first of its kind in Africa. The exchange is allowed companies to come into the exchange, Zimbabwe and other countries, to list on a US dollar stock exchange. So we believe that platform will hold its value in US dollars, and our capital was $300 million US dollars of equity. So it's mainly shareholders funding to date, but we do want to bring in more capital. So we are looking at debt instruments as well as some strategic shareholders that would enter the business, both locally, regionally and internationally, and we're building relationships with them all the time. And I think currently our business model is simple, that we own the land with equity, so we don't have any risk with debt. A lot of developers buy a piece of land with debt and then are under pressure to deliver in a certain time frame to get out of that debt cycle. We have the luxury of time, and that's why our vision is a longer vision to 2050. We're going to build out these cities methodically, one brick at a time, brick by brick. We're literally rebuilding the country.
Okay, and in terms of developing those cities, what are the key financial stats which underpin the business that you have, WestProp? I understand you've been around 20 years or so, almost 20 years.
Yeah. So I think it's systematic growth. We've grown year on year, double digits. We have an ambitious sales plan this year to get to $60 million. Last year we closed off just under 30. And our 2030 goal is to get to 100 million, which I'm confident we will do. That's 100 million annual revenue on $1 billion balance sheet by 2030. And I think our biggest, you asked where are our clients, and I would say our biggest client is the middle income market aspiring to buy into an affordable luxury product. And that's what we provide. We provide either payment terms. We were the first developer in the country, first of many things. I can give you a list, Donald, of about 20 things that we've done first. But this one in particular was the first company to introduce leasehold land. So here I'm sitting very close to the city of London, where most of the land, in fact, this building that I'm sitting in, doesn't belong to the people living in this building. It belongs to, the landlord who owns the land, and he gives a 99-year lease, sometimes 999-year lease, to people to own the development on the land, but not necessarily the land underneath. So we've done the same sort of concept in Harare, where we, as the listed entity, will continue to own the land in perpetuality, but then develop onto the land these buildings. So I think value creation is important. And if you look at our clients' affordability, we were the first developer also to introduce mortgages. So we actually, off our own balance sheet, have underwritten about $25 million of mortgages. We want to grow that to $100 million this year. And we're looking at partnering with some strategic key partners who would be able to give us that capital access. And I think the restraint for us has been in the past that most of our clients are required to pay cash. So, they would put 100% equity into these properties. Our sales, if you look at it, probably 75% of our sales is 100% equity with some debt structuring that we've done for them on our in-house mortgage book that we've developed, as I said, to 25 million to date.
And has that proved popular? Is that where the growth is going to come from? That middle income, mortgage-driven, lease-driven model that you're developing?
I really believe so, because if you look at our demographic, Zimbabwe, Africa, of course, in general, but Zimbabwe is one of the youngest populations in the world. Our average age of our population is 18 years. And if you look at the age group under 25, is 62% of our population. So 62% of the people currently in Zimbabwe, in their prime years, in 2050, when we realize our dream of 1 billion bricks, these will be our buyers. So we've got to nurture them. It's like planting seeds, We've got to, and that's why our message is really, I often say we're not just selling real estate, we're actually selling hope in a better future, hope in a country that we can be proud of. And certainly we are proud of our company, WestProp.
Let me take you back to the days of Robert Mugabe and his regime. Those were slightly dark days. Have things changed significantly since then?
Oh, yes, definitely. I think Zimbabwe truly is open for business now. There's been a liberalization of a lot of the government policies. Just an example, this year, I headed up a delegation last year that went to Astana, and we looked at the International Financial Center of Astana. And they've copied the same model for Zimbabwe. So we now have the first offshore financial center in Victoria Falls. Government's approved legislation, and this delinks the laws of that center to the country. So investors will be more confident coming into that investment center, feeling it's an international jurisdiction where their investment is not only safe and protected, but it's also not subject to many of the local laws. And that was something that would be impossible under Robert Mugabe's government.
Okay, no, I understand that. Now, presumably Zimbabwe remains a tough jurisdiction to work in. There's a risk premium on in-country investment, high inflation, lack of infrastructure. So to what extent do those things hinder growth?
I'm not concerned about them at all, Donald. My horizon is a longer term horizon than most investors and people in business in Zimbabwe. I'm looking at the next 25 years. So what can we do to build that future in a better way? And some of the things, of course, there are constraints. I mean, our city fathers have failed absolutely on service delivery. So if you look at it as a developer, certain things are really critical. If you look at your road infrastructure, sewer, water, electricity, that's macro services that government should provide traditionally. But right now, where we're building Pomona City, for example, a $4 billion city, I've just put in 700 service stands, 700 homes are being built. And we had to put in the services, the macro services for the city. So we've actually done our own septic tank system. Instead of connecting to the mainline sewer, we've done biodigesters, which is a more environmentally friendly way of getting rid of sewer. And then, of course, you get the grey water, and we've created about 20 million litres of water storage. So we now have bulk water facilities. We're putting in our own electricity solutions on a lot of our buildings in Millennium Heights. The whole buildings are now covered with solar panels, where we have 24/7 power that we supply to our residents. So I think the future model of WestProp is not just making a development profit from the buildings that we do, but it's actually the services that we provide. And we've got now smart meters where people in their homes can buy centralized gas. So we reticulate the development with central gas, which is a first again in our country. We reticulate it with water. with electricity, and we sell those services to the clients as a utility company. So I think business model 2.0 for WestProp, looking forward beyond the 2050 mark, definitely I think more income will come from the services. And we're not dependent on government at all for that.
That's absolutely fascinating. That is a really, really strong answer. Now, let me bring you back to something you mentioned in the introduction. Zimbabwe is still operating in three currencies: dollars, South African rands, and pound sterling. So the Zim dollar is gone, but you're still stuck with three currencies. How do you actually cope with that as a business?
I think it's about the market, what the market wants to use. There's more rand used in Bulawayo, which is closer to South Africa. But in Harare, in the majority of the country, you're looking at 90% plus of transactions being in US dollars. And typically US dollar cash would be used. And of course, what we call nostro, which is the US dollars in your bank account. They also have a reserve currency, the ZiG. I don't know if you've been following, but Zimbabwe has now a gold-backed currency. The Zimbabwean gold is called ZiG. And they've put into this currency about 700 million US dollars of reserves, which makes it the biggest reserve currency in the world today. It's not yet circulating very much. I think over time people will start using it when they can trust it more. But it's definitely a first time that Zimbabwe has been able to not print money as such and use it. So they're keeping this as a reserve currency backed by gold and hard currency.
What's your preference, Ken? Can I ask?
Well, definitely US dollars. I think, I go where the market is, and the market prefers US dollars, stability in US dollars. But I think over time, looking beyond 2030, probably I would give it 10 years, right? So in the next 10 years, I think Zimbabwe could build up enough reserves, probably to $10 billion. And then using that currency of choice, a local currency, I think people would gradually move back into the local currency. But it's going to require trust. At the end of the day, it's all about, what they hold in their hands is what they trust.
Okay. Now, it's intriguing. You've absolutely focused on Zimbabwe, Ken, rather than developing your skills internationally. So do you ever see yourself becoming an international property developer one day? And is the best capital return on your money still to be had from, as you say, those major developments, those cities you're building around Harare?
Don, thanks for that question. I think just to come back to the previous question, it's about returns, right? So risk-reward analysis. If you look at Zimbabwe today, our mortgage book is generating about 15% per annum in US dollars, which is a phenomenal return for a very secure debt instrument. I wouldn't get that return anywhere else really in the world, and certainly not on land that I directly control. So I think from me, looking alternatively, there are markets, and I have invested personally outside of the country in several markets. My wife's from Ukraine. I've got some property there. I've got property in Europe, here in London, in South Africa as well. But my confidence in those markets, believe it or not, is less than Zimbabwe because, I see the return that's coming from Zimbabwe. I see the future, and definitely, I put my money where my mouth is. And I think for me, if you looked at the analysis, I'll give you one example. In 2008, I bought a property in South Africa. It cost $2 million US dollars. I put 100% equity into it. And of course, the rand then was about 7-1. Well, today the rand's almost 20-1. I sold the property in 2018 for about $700,000. So I actually lost $1.3 million of capital because of the exchange rate. At the same time, I bought a property in Harare for $100,000 and sold it similar period later for $600,000. It was resold for $800,000 and then $1.2 million. So you look at the capital growth on that, that's 12 times over a similar period in US dollars. So I think there are returns to be made. And now is the time to get in. The opportunity is becoming less. Land pressure is becoming higher. Land availability is becoming less. And of course, that drives price. So price is being driven by the lack of supply, and it's not going to get any easier over the future. I think land in Zimbabwe is still relatively cheap to the region. I would see 3 to 4 times capital growth in the next 10 years, and then probably it would level off to a normal kind of playing field.
Now, it probably won't surprise too many of our investors who are watching, but you've really had to battle for your wins. And not just battle, but you've actually had to win court cases. So why have you had to go through so many court cases with environmentalists, with various other people who disagree with your view of things? Why so many court cases, Ken?
I think the tall trees have the strongest wind blowing against them. And all good things, take time. Property development's not an easy game anywhere in the world, and you've got to have patience. It's got to be patient capital, and to get rezoning done, could take 5 to 10 years in most countries. So it's taken that period for us. And unfortunately, along the way, we've had either competitors who wanted to stop us, or in the case of Robert Mugabe's government, we had a council as our partner in this joint venture, this Triple P, and the national government, being Robert Mugabe's government. So there was always a disagreement between these two parties of lower government and higher government, and that we found ourselves, between a hard place. And it took a long time, tenacity, patience, believing in the future, doing the right thing, resisting corruption, and just continuing to fight the good fight. And I think we've got through all that now, and we're out of the ground, and we're happy that that's behind us.
Now, here we go. My final question. Why WestProp? Why WestProp in terms of strategic investment? Why WestProp in terms of providing you with debt? Why is all that a good idea? If you could summarize all that for me, please.
Well, I think it's two things. It's looking at our unique selling proposition. Behind the billion brick, we often say we're bringing Dubai to Zimbabwe. And this idea of live, work, shop, play, lifestyle communities where it's safe and secure environment of a smart city is what we've come up with. It's very difficult for competitors to have the same kind of offering, although many are following us, because the size of the land we've got is generally over 100 hectares in each city. And in that location, we create a unique offering. So, for example, in the Hills, which is our latest lifestyle development, about a $370 million project, we're building the first PGA golf course in the country, USGA Championship spec, the first branded residence in sub-Saharan Africa, where we'll actually have this 5-star luxury hotel offering the owners the opportunity to own penthouses, presidential villas, and a 12-floor tower, residential tower that's connected to the hotel amenities and services. And on that golf course, it really is stunning. We're fortunate enough to have Peter Makovich, who just won #1 architect golf designer in the world 2 months ago. And he came to me 8 years ago and said, he really wants to leave his mark, a legacy in Zimbabwe. We engaged him as the designer, and he's designed a phenomenal course. The first time we've got a baobab forest. We've got 1,000 baobab trees in our nursery. In fact, they transplanted this huge, big, I call her the matriarch. It's like 3 big trunks. She's about 12, 14 meters high, weighs 20 tons, and she's thriving in this environment of a capital city. I think we're the only capital city in the world that has a baobab forest in a golf course on it.
And we shall leave you there, Ken. Thank you so much indeed for the summary of WestProp Holdings. That's absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Donald.